Good morning. Today we'll be talking about the particulate nature of matter. As we all know, substances exist in three primary forms: solids, liquids, and gas. So now in this video, I will be able to differentiate the three on three primarily properties: their volume, their shape, and their size. Now we all need to know that solids, they have a definite volume, they have a definite shape, and they have a definite size. Examples include an ice cube. An ice cube always has a definite volume, a definite size, and definite shape. In comparison, liquids have two of the properties same. However, one of the property differs. For example, in the case of liquids, we say that a 1 liter of liquid always occupies the same volume if we place it in a jar, in a bottle, or a cup. However, the shape, it is the only thing which differs. For example, liquid can easily move from one container to another. It can move from a pot to even a cup. We just and it flows easily. Now, the easily most common example is water. Now, in the case of solids, in the case of gases, we need to know that the gas has neither a fixed shape, neither a fixed volume, or neither a fixed size. We need to know that why this happens, because gas, in the presence of gases, there are extremely weak intermolecular forces of attraction. And this leads to an extremely greater kinetic energy of the molecules. Because of the great amount of kinetic energy of the molecules can move far away from each other. In the case of liquids, if we talk that there are considerate amount of kinetic energy molecules which prevent the molecules from moving far away from each other. And in the case of solids, the intermolecular forces of attraction are extremely strong, and huge amounts of energy is required to break them. Therefore, the molecules are vibrating close and adjacent to each other, and they cannot move far from each other. Now, in the kinetic theory, like I talked above as well, the three aspects have been talked about. However, in Brownian motion, you need to know that it states that the particles are in continuous movement, they are always in collision with each other. And this theory later basically explains why the process of diffusion occurs and how it spreads. Now, I'll be covering the other three properties which I did not cover in detail in my video above. So we need to know that it's in solid, liquids, and gases. They're in firstly in solids that the molecules vibrate in a fixed position. In liquids, they slowly slide over each other, which allows them to move easily. And in gases, is extremely fast movement, and you need to know that the movement it is random. The particles are in orderly position. Okay. Now, in the case of solids, solids are incompressible. For example, they can only be broken. For example, you strike a hammer on a table and it can break. However, it cannot be compressed. In the cases of liquids, it is difficult to compress them. However, it can be compressed. For example, in the case of a brake, when you press on the brake, it has a fluid in it, and thus it can be compressed, however very slightly. And in the cases of gases can be easily compressed. The most common example is in the cases of balloons. In balloons, you can easily blow in air in them, and similarly deflate them as well. Therefore, in the process, you need to know that the process of diffusion cannot occur in solids or in liquids. It can only occur in gases. Now, we talk about the changes in states of matter. There are four or five changes of state of matter. The process of converting a solid directly into a gas is known as sublimation. It is carried out by heating the solid. In the now melting occurs by converting a solid to a liquid, and the vice versa is known as freezing. You need to know that the most important thing I repeat about this video is that changes of state always occur at a constant temperature. For example, if you obviously heat energy is taken in by the solid when converting it into a liquid, but at the exact time when the change of state is occurring, there is no increase in temperature, because at that time the heat energy is required to overcome the strong intermolecular forces of attraction. Similarly, vaporization and condensation are vice versa in the cases of liquids and gases. Now, evaporation. In what happens in evaporation exactly is that in our body, for example, in the case of sweat, the molecules which have greater kinetic energy, they evaporate from the surface of the body, and they leave down the molecules which have lower kinetic energy molecules. This leads to the cooling effect which persists in our body and generally in the process of evaporation. Now, for example, you need to know that boiling for a water to boil, it always occurs at 100 degrees Celsius. However, the evaporation process takes place much earlier than 100 degrees Celsius. Now, for I told you above as well that this concept will be repeatedly tested in the exam, and they repeatedly asked that what is the change, what is taking place at B or D. So you need to know that there is a constant change in there is no change in temperature, and that is a flat line. Therefore, always there will be change in state. Now, those liquids which can evaporate easily are known as volatile. Volatile mean that substance which can evaporate easily. They are those substances which have low boiling or melting points. As we know previously as well, for example, that water has a boiling point of 100 degrees. For however, ethanol has a boiling point of 78 degrees. Now we talk about the process of diffusion and the factors which govern how fast a substance diffuses into the surroundings. And there are three main factors you need to know. Firstly, I hope you know the concept that diffusion is the process which take place from a high concentration to a low concentration and through a partially permeable membrane in the case of living things, or without a partially permeable membrane in the case of non-living things. Now, there are three factors: the mass of the substance, the temperature, and the intermolecular spaces. The lighter the substance, the faster it diffuses. Will happen in the exam is, for example, you will be given a methane molecule CH4, and you'll be given an oxygen molecule O2, and their respective molecular masses. You know that methane has a 16, whereas oxygen has 32. So obviously, you know that methane will cover twice the distance which oxygen will be able to cover in a specific amount of time. So why does this occur? Because methane has a lighter than oxygen. Now, in the case of temperature, the greater the amount of temperature, the greater the kinetic energy, the greater the kinetic energy of the molecules, and the faster they can move and easily diffuse into the surroundings. And the final factor is the intermolecular spaces. We all know, as previously discussed as well, that gases diffuse faster than liquids and solids. Why does this occur? Because gases have huge amounts of intermolecular spaces in between them. This occurs because they have very weak intermolecular forces. However, solids and liquids have very strong intermolecular forces of attraction. Now, the other process of osmosis and active transport we have already discussed in biology, and we have almost covered all the aspects which need to be covered in this video. So I hope you liked the video pretty much, and I hope for your feedback. Thank you.